I have been gradually teaching myself how to sew from home, and trust me, the process and the journey has been an amazing one. Anyways, this is a continuation video on how I made this particular playsuit, and the pattern drafting video is already up. I showed you guys the process I followed in making the pattern. I also explained in details how to make a playsuit, which also applies to how to make a jumpsuit, because a playsuit is a shorter version of a jumpsuit. Anyways, if you are interested in learning how I made this particular playsuit, how I drafted the pattern, I'm going to advise you to click on the link on my description box below and watch the pattern drafting, and then come join us on the cutting and sewing, because that's what we're going to be doing on this particular video. The fabric I used for this particular style is crepe, which is cotton, and I used 2 yards for the entire playsuit. Now let's go into the first thing we need to do: fold our fabric into 2 to cut out the front piece. So because we have 2 patterns, we're working with 2 patterns, the front pattern and the back pattern. We're going to be cutting the front first on the fabric, and then we'll proceed into cutting the back. Now, to cut out the front pattern, if you have a front pattern, if you already drafted out your pattern and you have it with you, the first thing you need to do now is fold your fabric into 2, just the way I'm doing it, and we're going to be placing our pattern on this fabric. When it comes to playsuits, I feel like almost every fabric is good for it. You can use crepe, you can use silk, you can use linen. A lot of fabric are actually good for making a playsuit because it is short and it is sometimes free. Most people like to do tight version of a playsuit, which is the one that you have to use a stretchy fabric for. But if you just want something very playful, something very free, I'm going to advise you to go with a light crepe or satin or even linen, and you're going to get the fit that you're going for. Now that I have my fabric folded into 2, the next thing I'm going to do is place my pattern on this fabric, and then I'm going to pin it down, making sure I have extra allowance on all sides of my pattern, okay? The center front, the crouch area, the side seam, the sleeves, the shoulder, the neckline. I'll make sure I have extra fabric to work with, okay? And then I'll go ahead and cut, making sure that I leave like 1/4 inch round my piece while I cut. Now, while we're drafting out this pattern, I left 1/2 inch allowance rounded. But now again, I'm leaving, let me say 1/4 inch, because I want this playsuit to be free. Okay, the idea of this particular playsuit is not fitted. It is free, okay, and that's the idea, and that is why I'm leaving more allowance round all side. And when I'm stitching, I'm just going to stitch with only 1/2 inch. If you are going for a fitted playsuit, I'm going to advise you to sew with the allowance you left while drafting out your pattern, or use a stretchy fabric and just sew into your allowance a little bit, and that is going to give you a tight fit. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm notching the waistline, and I'm also notching the line that is going to indicate where I'm going to pleat from, okay? And I will indicate that on the fabric using a notch with my scissors, okay? That's what I'm going to do here. Notch, this is for where I'll start pleating from, and the other notch on the waistline is where my pocket will sit. Next, we're going to do the same thing we did for the front. We're going to do that for the back. We're going to place our pattern on a folded fabric and then cut, leaving 1/4 inch round all sides, okay? The sleeves, the side seam. On the center back, I'm going to be leaving more allowance because of the zip. Now, this particular playsuit still need a zip for us to fit into the dress or into the playsuit. So for that reason, I left an allowance here, okay? I'm going to trim out a little bit of the allowance, but then you need to leave more allowance if you're going to add a zip, and especially if you're a new beginner, starters, if you're a novice, leave a lot of allowance, like 1 inch allowance for your zip, okay? Very necessary, because this is the center back and this is where we're going to be attaching the zip to. So leave allowance for a ear zip. So here we have 4 pieces of fabric, or 4 pieces of fabric, 2 for the front, 2 for the back. And do not forget to transfer your notches. And again, in case you don't know what notches means, transfer the points that we're going to be pleating, that's if your own playsuit has a pleat, and also transfer the points where the pocket is going to be sitting, because this playsuit has a pocket, and if your own doesn't have a pocket, ignore. Now for my pocket piece, I already have a pattern for a pocket that I created, and this is really simple. Just cut out pieces of fabric that is longer than your hands, like your palm, and then wider than your palm, okay? Because your palm is sitting through the pocket. Your palm is what is your palm is what is sitting through the pocket, okay? That's what's going to go through the pocket. So make sure that you're working with something that is longer and wider than your palm. For me, what I have here on my pocket pattern is length 8 inches, width 6 to 7 inches, okay? That's what I use in creating this particular pocket here. And I have videos that shows you how to create a pocket, but I decided not to bore you with that, because this is like a try out of me creating a playsuit, which I'm going to be creating more playsuit jumpsuits, because that's the point that we've gotten to. We've gotten to the point where we know how to create a playsuit and also a jumpsuit, okay? So yeah, this is not really necessary. And if yours doesn't have a pocket, skip this part. Go ahead and just practice how to sew your playsuits together, and just ignore these things that I'm doing. Ignore it. Move to the next. But then if you have a pocket and you really want to add a pocket to your playsuit, just cut out a fabric that is 7 to 8 inches long and 6 to 7 inches wide, and then give it any design that you want, and that is how you create your pocket. So the next thing I'm going to do is pin my pocket fabric to the playsuit fabric, and I'll show you how. So this is my back piece, and you see that notch that I have here for where my pocket will be sitting, that's on the playsuit. I am going to place my pocket piece on that particular notch, and then I'll pin it down. So if you always get confused on how to pin your pockets to your fabric, just make sure that the right side of your fabric is what you are placing the right side of your pockets to. Okay, so you see me flipping this to the right side. Now I'm going to make sure that the right side of my pocket is sitting on the right side of that playsuit fabric. You see, right side, and then you just match it out like this. So right side facing right side, you pin, and that's just it. Okay, so just make sure that you know where the wrong side of your fabric is and where the right side of your fabric is, and make sure that you're placing the right sides together, and then you pin. And I'm actually following the notch I created on the playsuit fabric. I'm using that notch to pin down my pockets. And then I'm pinning this to the side of my back piece, not the center back, okay? The side seam, where the side seam will be sitting. And this is how it's going to look after I sew. So I'll repeat the same step on the other side of my back piece, okay? This is the other side of my back piece. Remember, right side of the fabric facing the right side of the pocket, like this. So you see the two right side. Then I'll go ahead and pin this, following my waist notch, the notch I have on my waistline. Now I am going to start sewing my pieces together. I started by sewing the back of my back piece, like the two back pieces. I started by sewing the center backs together just to close it off, but I'll be adding my zip later, okay? But I'm just going to sew the center back to the crotch area like this by 1/2 inch. But then on the side I left for zip, I sewed that in by 1 inch. Okay, because I left allowance for the zip, so yeah. So you see what I have here. This is the center back. Now this is the side. I'm going to sew the pocket. Because I have the pocket pinned down already, I'll just follow it like this by 1/2 inch. and then I'll sew this down. You don't even have to do half an inch, you can do quarter an inch. Just make sure you're sewing your pocket piece to your playsuit piece. Like I made mention while I was drafting out this pattern, I said that these videos I always upload, especially the pattern drafting and also the sewing, is just illustration, a guideline for you to follow to sew in yours, okay, to sew yours, to draft your own pattern. These are all guidelines. Now you can watch and follow exactly what I did, or you can watch and decide to design whatever you want to design. So you don't have to actually create exactly what I'm creating. It's just a guideline. You can use the guideline and then create your own designs. Okay, that's the aim. The aim is for you to be able to sew whatever you want to sew, just following my own basic foundation. So don't say you're doing this wrong, you're not doing this right, the last video I watched was not like this. No, this is guidelines. Okay, if you feel like there's something that is not adding up, you can actually do yours. Okay, but then if you feel like, yeah, this is a good foundation for me to follow, then you follow it and then create your own beautiful piece. That's the aim. So once I was done, I'll iron this, you know, because I'm about to create the lines for the pleat. And everything I did here on the back piece, I will do it on the front piece. Okay, I'll sew the pocket side, I'll sew the center front, just the way I sew the center back. I'll do the same thing, and this is what you should have once you're done. This is my front piece done. I'll iron out the center front so it lays flat, because now I want to create the pleat that I have on my playsuit. Now if you notice, my playsuit has some gatherings happening from the bust upwards. Why on the waist it is a little bit snatched and tight is because I created pleats to cinch in or to tighten the waistline, so it will give it like this fitted look, which is not something I advise everybody to do. It's just something I wanted to see on my playsuits. When I was designing this, that is the idea I had. So I wanted a pleat on the waistline, which is what I'm going to create right now. Okay, so I'll be creating my pleat. First of all, I'll rule out a line following the notch I indicated while creating the pattern. Remember, I transferred the notch from my pattern to the fabric. Now from that line, I'll come down by 5 inches. That is how long I want my pleats to be. That's the length of my pleat, 5 inches. So I'll just keep indicating 5 inches so I can also rule a straight line before I start creating my pleats. So this is the second line below my waist. You can see that where my waist is where the pocket starts from. And you can see that this line that I am indicating right now is below it, like 2-3 inches below, 2 inches below. Now for the pleats, from my center front, I'll mark 2 inches out. From the center front like this, the line from the center front, I'll mark 2 inches in or out, and from that 2 inches I'll mark another 2 inches. That is how wide my pleat is going to be. So I'll do this on the top line and on the base line so I can get a proper pleat that aligns with the up and the down. Okay, so this is going to be my first pleat. I'll do the same thing on this other side. From the center front, I'll go in by 2 inches, and then I'll mark another extra 2 inches outside these 2 inches. I'll mark another 2 inches. And then I'll pleat. So I'll hold on to those 2 inches like this, and then I'll pleat. I'll pleat by using my pins first to hold this down before I take it to my sewing machine to sew this straight down. But then I'm going to continue pleating until I calculate what I have on my waistline and make sure that it is exactly what I'm supposed to have. Now remember that what I'm working with now is just for my front. So because this is for my front, my waist here is supposed to be 14.5 inches. Okay, my waistline for the front is supposed to be 14.5 because my total waistline is 29. 29 divided by 2 gives you 14.5. 14.5. So for the back I'll be having 14.5, for the front I'll be having 14.5. So What I should have here in total after pleating is 14.5, an extra allowance to sew this to my back piece. I hope that makes sense. So I'm doing another 2 inches after the first 2 inches pleat, and then I'll mark another 2 inches after it to get my pleat allowance or my pleat fold. Okay, I'll move to this side, do the same thing. Whatever I'm doing on the right side of my front is what I'm doing on the left side of my front, okay? Okay, looking at it, I think my pleat is 1.5, a bit 2 inches, but yeah. So once I am done with this side, I'll do the same thing on the other side. Then I'll use my measuring tape to calculate what I have on the waist to make sure I have 14.5 plus extra allowance to sew this to my back piece. Now remember, while you sew, always measure, okay, so that you don't go into your measurement or you don't have excess. It's always important to confirm your measurement. I don't know if you guys are noticing that the more I pleat, the more the waistline is looking cinched or smaller than every other side. Anyways, this is me trying to calculate what I have, and then I am going to start sewing. So what I had after pleating was something like 17 inches, which was still too much. So I created another 1 pleat to take in 2 inches out of that particular measurement. So I have lesser measurement on the waistline. And now I am just sewing in my pleats, okay? And sewing in these pleats from where I created these lines is just going to help my waistline on the playsuit be smaller. So it's going to help me have a smaller waistline on the playsuit. So when I wear this, the waistline is not bogus, it is cinched like this. You can see what is happening here. Everything is tight on the waist. And every other part is big, but you see the waist, very small, and that's what I wanted. So what I have here on the front piece is exactly what I have on the back piece. This is the back. And what I'm going to do now is go sew everything together, okay? And sewing in your front to your back is very simple. We're going to start from the shoulders, sew that by 1/2 inch, and then we follow from this armhole to the pocket. We're going to be following the curve like this to the pocket, curve it, come out, and then continue on to the playsuit like this, and down to the length of the playsuit. It's very, very easy. Let's go to that. So this is the shoulder. I'm sewing the shoulder by 1/2 inch. That's the front piece to the back piece, joining that by 1/2 inch. And then I'll move on to sewing from the below the armhole. So at this point, if you're a novice, you're a beginner, and you're making this playsuit, you should know how to stitch already. You should know how to match your sewing machine, how to sew straight line and curve lines. Okay, very important, because we're going to be doing a lot of curving here. And see the way I curve. I always stop, turn before I curve, because that's the only way I know how to do it. So I stop sewing, take off my needle from the fabric, turn my fabric, and then continue on the curve. Where I cannot curve anymore, I do the same thing. I stop, turn my fabric before I continue. Okay, so just take your time while sewing your piece together, so you are able to get all points, like you're able to sew in all points. And that's just it. That's very simple. So joining these two fabrics here, that's the pockets from the front and the back. Joining these two fabrics is automatically going to create a whole pocket, like a complete pocket. So I can't wait to make a jumpsuit, and show you guys the process of how I made a jumpsuit. And I'm very sure that the jumpsuit I'm going to make is going to come out really, really beautiful, because I've been able to correct my mistake on this playsuit, which is increasing my crouch depth. Yes, to get more freedom on my crouch area. That's the only thing I need to do. So yeah, and I'm going to apply that on my jumpsuit video. Next, we're going to be sewing the crouch together, the front crouch and the back crouch together by 1/2 inch. That's what I left while I was cutting. And that's basically it. Once we're done joining the front and the back together, the next thing for us to do is sew the zip, use bias for the neckline, because we did not create spacing for the neckline, so we're going to be using bias, and then we're going to be weaving everything, and that's it. That's practically it. So now it's time for me to add the zip. Remember, you have to weave, or if you don't have weaving machine, you can use your bias to close rough edges. But me, I went ahead to weave mine, and then now I'm going to add my zip. At this point, I have not weaved yet. I just went ahead to add the zip first before I weaved, and then I was not able to hem all rough edges. So this is how I always add my zip to whatever I'm sewing. Either Playsuit. Now I can add Playsuit to that, but either my Playsuit, my skirt, my top, my dress. This is how I always attach the zip to it. Okay. And I have a detailed video which is going to be linked on the description box below for anybody that wants to learn. And if you guys feel like my zip video is too outdated, you want a recent video on how to attach zip, just tell me, and guess what, I am going to create one video for you. But anyways, this is it. This is the zip attached to my playsuit. The next thing I'm going to do is use bias on the neckline, which I have video for, and then I'll go ahead and hem all rough edges, which is on the length and on the sleeves. That is where I have rough edges poking out, so I'll go hem it. This is what I mean. It has been weaved and now it is time for me to hem. So hemming means I'm going to be folding the rough edge inside, or I'm going to be folding this and I'll sew on it. I like to use hemming gun with hot iron to hem either the base of my dress or the base of my sleeves. But for this one, I tried to sew this in and not use hemming gun, because I actually found out that most times when I use hemming gun to finish up my rough edges and I wash the dress or the playsuit, I can add playsuit to it, or the top, the hemming gum start becoming very weak, and then before you know, that's rough edge that I'm trying to hide inside by folding starts poking out. So recently I found myself just sewing in anything that needs to sew in, like the edges on my sleeves, I sew that in instead of using hemming gum. The edges on my dress or my playsuit, I sew this in so I don't have any weak hem. Yes. But anyways, guys, this is how I created the playsuit. This is the sewing version, of course. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Were the steps very easy? What would you like to see? And do you find this particular video interesting? Let me know in the comment section. Please don't forget to like this video and then subscribe if you're new. If you're new to my channel, subscribe. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to my channel, and I hope to see you here more often, learning and following my process. I'll be seeing you guys on my next video. Bye. Mwah.